What's the best decade for music? It's the 80s, of course, and when the sun's out, it makes me think of the times when those misspent summers of youth listening to 80s pop music on the radio. So, today we're going to do a top 10 of my best songs of the 1980s. Let's get ready to rock. Welcome back to Rocker's Beer Review. We're going a little bit more pop than rock today. Not done a huge amount of music in the last sort of few months, whether that be in reviews or rankings or top 10. So today we're going to kick off this sort of summer of music that I'm going to be doing with basically my favourite 10 songs of the 1980s. Now, you know, if anyone is of my sort of age, you must remember the 80s. You know, it's probably the decade of the, well, it's not probably, it is the decade of the best music around. And obviously we're going to go more towards a sort of pop element more than the sort of rock. So I'm not including any sort of hard rock or heavy metal songs in this, even though obviously we do a lot of that sort of stuff on the channel. This is the stuff that I was listening to when I was a teenager, before really I got into sort of rock music. And I just wanted to present you some obvious 80s chart toppers and also some sort of a few little more obscure ones from the 80s. So I'm really interested in anyone else putting their, if they can put their top 10 together, and let me know in the comments. I mean, for me, really difficult to do this because obviously the 80s as a decade for music, there's so much rich quality music there. It's really the last sort of decade where music was that good, you know. So let's kick off with number one. So my first song, and these, I must admit, these are in no particular order because like picking 10 was difficult enough. Putting them in order would be even more difficult. So I've just put 10 in here in no particular order. But the one I'm kicking off with is one of my favourite songs of the 80s, and that is Broken Wings by Mr. Mister. Now, this song came out in 1985. It hit number 1 in the USA, and it was number 4 in the UK. And this song also featured, for those that are into gaming, on GTA Vice City. You might see there's quite a few here that you may recognise from Vice City. If you're a big gamer and you are, you know, grew up in the 80s, then that game's a real sort of like a love letter really to the decade. And there's lots of really great songs on it. But I'm kicking off with Broken Wings, Mr. Mister. A great song. You know, they did another song called Kiri, which was the other sort of chart topper, but nothing really else really sort of continued the band really. You know, they had a few albums in the 80s, but really weren't really a band that sort of continued and had a rich vein of quality music. But Broken Wings was up there. Brilliant song. Number 2, and you know, a lot of these sort of songs, you know, a lot of it, you know, you think about 80s music and there's a lot of nostalgia associated with it. You know, were the 80s really that great, or is it just that nostalgia about being young and carefree and all the rest of it? But this is a song that also, you know, the other thing about 80s music always makes me, when the sun's out and it's summery, makes me think of it even more. And this one is the true 80s summer smash. This is Boys of Summer by Don Henley. Obviously used to be the drummer and singer in the Eagles, but this is his solo song. Came out in 1984. This was actually written. The music was written by Mike Campbell, that people may know who's the guitarist with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. But it's a really great song, really invokes sort of the summer really and days gone by. Hit the number 5 in the US and number 12 in the UK. So it wasn't a number 1 hit, but a really great song. Number 3, and this is where we're going a bit obscure. This is probably the most obscure song, but one of my favourites, and really is is almost like has every ingredient that you want in a top 80s hit. This is Harden My Heart by the band Quarter Flash. Now, a lot of people won't even remember Quarter Flash. They basically had 2 songs that were really sort of hits. This one came out in 1981, so right at the beginning of the 80s. This was not on GTA Vice City, but on GTA Vice City Stories, that if you had one of those handheld PlayStation consoles, then you may have had that game and remember that. Written by Marv Ross, the guitarist, and his wife, Rindy Ross, as the singer. But as I said, it's got all the ingredients of an 80s hit. It's got it's got the sultry female singer. It's got the guitar solo, great guitar solo in there. It's a really upbeat sing-along sort of song, and it's got something that we don't see in many songs these days: saxophone solo. And the saxophone solo and the saxophone on their music was played by the singer Rindy Ross. So a fantastic quality song, but it's a really great song. So give it a listen. I will put links to Spotify in the description so you can listen to this song. Maybe you think, I've never heard of that, but when you hear it, you will. If you've ever watched Rock of Ages, whether that be in the film or obviously the musical stage show, as it were, it's also in that film as well. So yeah, great. Hard in My Heart by Quarterflash. Number 4 in my list is a song which I think is going to be in a lot of people's top 10 of the 80s. It's a cracking song. Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. Hit number 2 in the UK, number 1 in the USA. This came out in 1985. For some reason, a lot of these songs, maybe it's that sort of time, but mid-80s, it seems to be the richest vein in terms of the 80s. I mean, I'd say now at this point is that, you think of the 80s, you think of the music, and it's great music, but if you think about it, a lot of the later part of the 80s, there was a lot of rock stuff in the charts, so that was great. But in the UK, we were subjected a lot to the Stock Aitken and Waterman, so whether that be Kylie Minogue, any other soap star, Bananarama, Funboy 3, bands like Sonia. There was a lot of basically very manufactured pop music. So, when you think about it, the later part of the 80s wasn't that great. But anyway, we've diverged. Everyone Wants to Rule the World, Tears for Fears, and then a great song, a real sort of pop anthem, really. And Tears for Fears, a really great 80s band. And they're still, they've recently released an album, and it's pretty good actually now. So they're still going, they're still current. Great band, but this, obviously Everyone Wants to Rule the World from their album Songs from the Big Chair was one of the biggest selling albums of that year. A really great album as well. So number 4 on my list, Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. In number 5, a bit of a one-hit wonder, but I think a lot of people that like 80s pop music will remember it and know it and love it. I Just Died in Your Arms by The Cutting Crew. This came out in 1986. In the UK, it hit number 4. In the US, it hit number 1. Not bad for a British band. Again, a real great anthem, great pop song, but never really followed up with anything else. I couldn't even think of another song by Cutting Crew. So obviously that classic one-hit wonder really from them, but it was a great song. And I'm sure that they've been hopefully creating a career based on that one song for many years since. Number 6 is another one that I think is on a lot of people's list. The band is Duran Duran. If you think of the 80s, it's probably one of the first bands you think of. Really prolific, certainly in the earlier part of the 80s, but I'm going to put Rio as my favourite song by them. I think it's just a great song. It's got a great bass line. You think of it and you think of that really exotic video that was shot, I think, in Sri Lanka. Really, when pop videos were really a big thing, this was led the way. And this came out in 1982, but very surprisingly, only hit number 9 in the UK and number 14 in the US. So it wasn't their biggest song. There's obviously a lot of other good songs that probably did hit the charts, like Girls on Film, like Hungry Like the Wolf. But this was, in my opinion, one of their best songs from the 80s. So that's Rio by Duran Duran. In number 7, well, another artist that, you think of the 80s, it has to be Michael Jackson. Whatever you think of him and, whatever, all the news that happened after that, you can't beat Thriller as being one of the, 50 million album sales, and one of the biggest. I think it may even be still the biggest selling album of all time, and there's so many great songs on it. I'm going to put Beat It on there though, because I remember at the time a really great single, a really great pop song, but obviously it had a lot more rock elements to it. Eddie Van Halen plays the solo. There's your biggest sort of rock or hard rock link to this list, really, was that Eddie Van Halen solo. Hit number 1 in the USA, number 3 in the UK, but it's a cracking song, and I still think it's better than Billie Jean. In 8th, position on my list, I'm putting We Close Our Eyes by Go West. Another song that came out in 1985. It hit number 5 in the UK, but in the USA, it didn't even hit the top 40. Number 41 it got to. But it's a really great 80s song. And, you know, when I think of the 80s, I always think of this song. I think it's, you know, it's a real sort of upbeat song. It's got lots of real sort of 80s sort of synthesizer sound effects on it. But it's a really cracking song. So We Close Our Eyes by Go West. In 9th position on my list, I'm going to put The Sun Always Shines on TV by a-ha. Again, 1985, hit number 1 in the UK and number 20 in the USA. A lot of people, when they think of a-ha, they'll probably think, oh no, I think Take On Me, which was their first song that they released, and one that's a big 80s sort of anthem. But I think I prefer The Sun Always Shines on TV. It's a better song in my opinion, and that's why I'm putting it in my list of top 10 80s tunes. And then we round out my list with a song which is, I suppose, you know, as much as it is a great pop song, it probably is a little bit different than what you remember him from. This is Let's Dance by David Bowie. This came out in 1983, hit number 1 in the UK and number 1 in the USA. I think, in my opinion, it's, you know, one of Bowie's greatest songs. I mean, you know, David Bowie has made so many great albums. There's lots of songs that you can just reel off from David Bowie, but I really like Let's Dance. I mean, it's a real 80s song. It's got obviously Nile Rodgers playing on it. It's even got Stevie Ray Vaughan plays the guitar solo on it. It's a really great sort of upbeat dance sort of song, and it's you know, I think it's one of Bowie's best, and that album that it came from is also a really cracking album. So that makes my 10th position, Let's Dance by David Bowie. So that's my top 10. I don't know how quickly that's whizzed by, certainly for me. Again, it was quite easy doing the first few songs on there, but there's a lot of ones that probably didn't make the cut. I mean, really, I wanted to put Easy Lover by Philip Bailey and Phil Collins on there. What Is Love by Howard Jones, another great song. Wicked Game by Chris Isaak. Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes. I mean, these are great 80s songs as well, but they didn't quite make my top 10. So let me know what you think. Am I talking rubbish? If you're out there and you're similar age to me, you've probably got your own top 10. I'm really interested to see what your top 10 80s pop tunes are. Let's keep it more pop than rock, because it's very easy to put, you know, Iron Maidens and your White Snakes and your Kiss and Wasp and all that sort of stuff in there as well. But keep it pop. But let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to know what your top 10 are. Or if you can't think of 10, I mean, God, you could easily think of 10. Let me know a couple of your top songs of the 1980s, because, you know, it's the decade where music was brilliant. You know, it really was great. So let me know in the comments your top 10, and hope you've enjoyed this video. If, as I say, we've got more music stuff coming. I'm going to do the Def Leppard album, which is probably going to be out I think it's out this week. I'm going to do a review of that when it comes out, and then after that I'm going to do an album ranking of Def Leppard, and I've also got some videos planned with different genres of music. So we're going to have a video about power metal. So if you're a power metal fan, you know, please subscribe to the channel. I love power metal, and also some post grunge bands. You know, what are the top 10 post grunge bands? There's lots more stuff to come for music. I haven't had a lot of time in the last few months, but now I'm trying to sort of really make more effort to them, because, you know, it's summer and I love listening to music in the summer, and rock music, pop music, 80s music is what it's all about. Hope you've enjoyed this, and until the next one, you know what you're going to do. Keep on rocking.